What I am about to tell you, heaven did not fully anticipate, the elders did not predict it, the scrolls did not record it in the way it has actually unfolded, because what you have become through the fire, through the wilderness, through the seasons that should have broken you and did not, has exceeded the original projection. You did not just survive what was designed to test you, you transcended it. And heaven is not disappointed. Heaven is standing. Stay with me. Because this message was prepared for the moment you finally understood how far you have actually risen. There is a concept in the divine economy that most people never encounter, because most people never reach the threshold where it becomes relevant. The concept is this: there are levels of spiritual ascension that are written into the original design of a chosen one's life, levels that God anticipates, that angels monitor, that the spiritual atmosphere responds to as the chosen one progresses through them. These are the expected levels, the designed levels, the levels that the original blueprint accounts for when a chosen one walks faithfully through every stage of their preparation. And then there is what you did. You did not walk through every stage faithfully. You walked through stages that were not on the original blueprint. You went through things that were not designed to produce ascension. They were designed to produce limitation, fire that was not sanctifying fire, wilderness that extended beyond what preparation required, opposition that came not just from the enemy but from people who were supposed to be safe, betrayals that hit at the foundation level, losses that were not just painful but structurally destabilizing. And you rose through all of it, not just survived, rose. There is a specific kind of elevation that is only possible through the specific kind of suffering you went through. It cannot be taught. It cannot be imparted. It cannot be downloaded through anointing or accessed through discipline or produced through faithfulness alone. It can only be forged in the particular fire of the experience that was too much for an ordinary person, and that a chosen one walked through and came out of carrying something they did not have when they went in. You came out carrying something you did not have when you went in. And what you are carrying right now, the specific quality of spiritual authority, the depth of compassion, the unshakable rootedness, the capacity to hold space for other people's suffering without being destroyed by it, the ability to speak from a place of experience rather than theory, that combination, in that specific texture, in that specific depth, was not fully anticipated by the original design. Because the original design did not fully account for what you would choose to do with what you went through. It accounted for survival. It accounted for faithfulness. It accounted for the growth that comes from walking through difficulty with God. But it did not fully account for the level of surrender you brought to the hardest seasons, the depth of trust you maintained when trust had no visible reason to remain, the quality of love you continued to extend when love had been returned to you as betrayal, the persistence of your pursuit of God in the seasons when God felt most absent. Those choices, those specific, costly, nobody-was-watching choices, produced an ascension that exceeded the design, and heaven noticed. I want to talk about what it means to rise beyond divine limits, because the phrase itself can be misunderstood. I am not saying that you have exceeded God's authority or His power or His design for human existence. God is limitless, and nothing rises above Him. What I am saying is that within the specific framework of what was designed for your individual life, the anticipated ceiling of your spiritual development, the projected height of your ascension, you have gone higher than the projection. You are not where you were supposed to be. You are higher. And that higher place carries responsibilities and authorities and access points that most spiritual content never speaks about. Because most spiritual content is written for people who are in the anticipated range, the designed levels, the normal trajectory of a faithfully walking chosen one. This message is for the one who is not in the anticipated range. This message is for the one who somehow, through choices made in the darkest seasons with no witnesses and no guarantee of reward, climbed higher than they were supposed to climb, and is now standing in a place that feels unfamiliar, not because something is wrong, but because this altitude was not in the original itinerary. You are looking around at the view and nothing looks familiar. Not because you are lost, because you are further than the map goes. And what I want to do in this message is help you understand where you are, what this altitude means, what it carries, what it requires, and why the unfamiliarity of it is not a sign of displacement, but a sign of the most significant elevation of your entire spiritual journey. Let me start with what this altitude feels like from the inside, because the chosen one who has risen beyond the anticipated level often does not recognize it as elevation. They experience it as something else entirely. They experience it as a strange combination of expansion and isolation. They feel, simultaneously, larger on the inside than they have ever felt, and more alone on the outside than they have ever been. Both of those things are real. Both of those things are the signature of this specific altitude. The expansion is the direct result of what the fire produced. Something in you has been enlarged by the suffering, not wounded and stretched in a painful way, but genuinely expanded. Your capacity for understanding has grown. Your ability to hold complexity without needing to resolve it into simple answers has developed. Your tolerance for ambiguity, for the space between questions and their answers, between promises and their fulfillment, has deepened. Your compassion has been made specific and embodied rather than theoretical. You do not pity people from a distance anymore. You carry them with you because you know what it costs to carry things, and you would not let anyone carry theirs alone if you can help it. That expansion is the evidence of the altitude. The isolation is also real and also the result of the altitude. When you rise to a level that was not in the original projection, you exit the community of people who are at the projected levels, not because you are better than them, not because you have chosen to separate yourself, but simply because the frequency you are operating at, the depth you are speaking from, the things you are perceiving, the questions you are living inside, they no longer have a natural home in the conversations happening around you. You have outgrown the conversations, not arrogantly, painfully, because the conversations were where the community was. And now the community does not fully know how to meet you at the altitude where you currently stand. They love you. They want to be there with you. But they are at a different elevation, the designed elevation, and the gap between where they are and where you are creates a loneliness that has nothing to do with the quality of the relationship and everything to do with the altitude of the ascension. This isolation is not permanent, but it is real in this transitional moment, because the community of people who operate at your current altitude has not yet found you. They are out there. They are being drawn toward you, directed toward you, positioned to cross your path. But the timing of their arrival is calibrated to a specific moment in your forward movement. They come when you move forward. Their appearance is God's confirmation that you have taken the step He has been asking you to take. And the fact that you have not yet encountered them in full is part of why this message needed to find you, to tell you that the loneliness of this altitude is not your permanent address. It is your current location in the transition between who you were and who you are becoming, between the season of preparation and the season of positioning, between the fire that formed you and the field where what was formed will be fully deployed. The community is coming, but you have to move first. Now let me talk about what the altitude carries, because this is where the message gets practical and where I need you to be especially present. The altitude you have risen to, the beyond the anticipated level height, it carries specific things, specific authorities, specific access, specific responsibilities. The first thing it carries is an authority that is not positional but experiential. Most authority is positional. It comes from a title, a role, a platform, a credential, a number of followers, a level of institutional recognition. It is granted from outside and can be revoked from outside. It is real, but it is contingent. It depends on the structures that gave it. The authority you carry is different. It is experiential authority. It comes not from what you have been given, but from what you have been through. It cannot be granted by any external structure because it was not produced by an external structure. It was produced in the fire. It was forged in the wilderness. It was refined in the seasons of loss and confusion and almost breaking and somehow remaining. No one can give you this authority, and no one can take it away. When you speak from this authority, when you open your mouth and speak from the depth of what you have actually lived rather than what you have theoretically studied, something happens in the room that positional authority cannot produce. People feel it before they can analyze it. Something in them recognizes something in you, not your title, not your platform, the weight you carry, the depth from which you are speaking, the realness of the thing you are bringing. That recognition is the authority activating, and you have been underusing it, not because you are lazy or unfaithful, because you did not know you had it at the level you have it, because the seasons that produced it did not feel like authority-building seasons. They felt like destruction seasons. And so you did not emerge from them saying, I have been given great authority. You emerged from them saying, I survived. Barely, but I survived. What you experienced as barely surviving was actually ascending to a level that most people never reach. And the authority that comes with that level has been sitting in you, partially dormant, waiting for the moment you understood what you were carrying well enough to deploy it deliberately rather than accidentally. This is that moment. The second thing this altitude carries is a specific compassion that functions as healing, not emotional sympathy, though that is present too. A specific capacity to sit with another person in their darkest place and not be destroyed by the darkness, to hold space for someone's suffering without flinching from it, without rushing to resolve it, without offering the well-intentioned but ultimately dismissive comfort of easy answers. To simply be present in the darkness with them, unhurried, unafraid, genuinely there, and in that presence communicate something that no words can fully carry. You have been there. You know what the bottom feels like from the inside, not from a safe distance, from inside it. And that knowing makes you something extraordinary to a person who is currently there and who has encountered too many helpers who helped from outside the darkness without ever having been inside it. You do not help from outside the darkness. You enter it with them and you bring light from within. That is not a small thing. That is a rare and specific gift that only suffering of a specific depth can produce. And the people who need what you carry, who need someone who has actually been where they are and came back, they are being drawn toward you. They always have been. You have noticed it. People find you. People tell you things they have never told anyone. People feel safe around you in a way that has sometimes made you uncomfortable because you did not fully understand what they were sensing. They were sensing the altitude. They were sensing the experiential authority, the real compassion, the light that lives in a person who has been through the dark and is no longer afraid of it. In part 2, I'm going to take everything I have built here and bring it to its full weight. I'm going to tell you the specific signs that confirm you have risen to this level, what the next level looks like from where you are standing, the one thing that is waiting for you just beyond your current comfort, and the declaration that officially marks this as the moment you accepted the altitude rather than apologizing for it. Part 2 is the fullness. Stay. You are still here. And I want to begin part 2 by saying something that the altitude you have reached has made necessary for someone to say to you directly. Stop apologizing for how far you have come. Not out loud. You have mostly stopped doing it out loud, but internally, in the quiet adjustments you make to fit into spaces that were designed for a smaller version of you, in the way you pull back the fullness of what you know and what you see and what you carry so that the people around you do not feel the gap between where they are and where you are. In the subtle, constant management of your own depth to maintain connections that can only survive at a surface level. The apologizing is costing you. Every adjustment downward is an adjustment away from the altitude that was earned through real fire. Every time you shrink yourself to fit a space that no longer matches your actual dimensions, you are performing a kind of spiritual dishonesty, not toward the people around you, but toward the God who put you through what He put you through, specifically so that you would emerge at this altitude and operate from it fully. Now, He did not bring you through the fire so you could pretend the fire did not change you. He brought you through the fire so the world could see what the fire produced. Stop apologizing. Start occupying. Let me give you the signs. The specific signs that confirm you have risen to the level this message is describing, because I want you to be able to hold these signs as evidence, concrete, specific, undeniable evidence, in the moments when the altitude feels more like isolation than elevation and you are tempted to second-guess how far you have actually come. The first sign is that ordinary spiritual content no longer satisfies you. You have noticed this. The messages that used to move you deeply, the ones that used to carry a weight that shifted something in you, have been landing more lightly, not because the content is bad, not because your faith has dried up, but because you have been developed past the level they are speaking to. You have read the books, you have consumed the content, you have sat in the rooms, and something in you keeps saying there has to be more than this. There has to be a deeper conversation than the one happening here. That hunger for the deeper conversation is the altitude speaking. You have risen past the level of the content that used to satisfy you. And the content that will meet you at your current level has not yet been fully built, because there are not many people at your current level who are also building content. Which means the message that meets you at this altitude may be one that you yourself are meant to create. The hunger that is not being met by what exists may be your assignment to build what does not yet exist. The second sign is that you carry a weight of spiritual perception that sometimes feels like a burden. You see things that other people do not see, not in a mystical, supernatural way necessarily, though that may be part of it, but in the way of a person whose depth of experience has sharpened their perception to a degree that most people around them cannot match. You see the subtext of conversations. You sense the unspoken dynamics in rooms. You perceive the spiritual temperature of environments and relationships with an accuracy that you have learned to trust, even when you cannot explain the basis of the perception. And it is heavy, because seeing clearly is not always comfortable, because knowing things, sensing things that the people around you cannot perceive creates a specific kind of loneliness, because you carry the weight of what you see with no guarantee that anyone around you will understand why you see it or what to do with it. That weight is the altitude. At this level of elevation, the atmospheric pressure is different. What you perceive is more. What you carry is heavier. And the capacity to carry it, the specific, forged, fire-tested capacity to hold significant spiritual weight without being crushed, that is what the hardest seasons produced in you. You were built for this weight. The third sign is that the things that used to bind you have lost their power, not all at once. Not in a dramatic moment of sudden liberation, but quietly over time you have noticed that what used to be able to pull you down, certain fears, certain cycles, certain patterns of thought or behavior that had roots that went deep, those roots have been loosening. The grip has been weakening, the pull has been diminishing, not because you tried harder to resist, because you rose higher than the things reach. Some limitations cannot be overcome by fighting them at their own level. They can only be transcended by rising above the altitude where they operate. And that is what the ascension has done. You have not defeated every battle at ground level. You have ascended past the altitude where many of those battles have power. That is freedom of a different quality than the freedom that comes from willpower. It is the freedom of the bird that is no longer in the cage, not because it broke the bars, but because it flew through the open top that it could only see once it rose high enough. You rose high enough. The fourth sign is that your prayers have changed in quality, not necessarily in length or in eloquence, in depth, in honesty, in the quality of intimacy. The prayers you pray now are not the prayers you prayed in the beginning of the journey. They are not the careful, well-structured, theologically appropriate prayers of someone who is performing prayer for an audience, even an audience of one. They are the raw, unmanaged, sometimes inarticulate conversations of a person who has been through enough with God that the formality has dissolved, and what remains is something more like two people who have been through war together, talking with the ease and the depth and the complete absence of pretense that only shared extremity produces. Your prayer life has become a genuine conversation rather than a performance. That is the altitude speaking. The fifth sign is that you have a specific thing you are supposed to build that you have not yet built. It has been with you through all of the seasons. It has survived the fire. It has endured the wilderness. It has been present through every stage of the ascension. Sometimes vivid, sometimes quiet, sometimes almost extinguished, but never fully gone. It is still there, right now, as you listen to this message. Something that is yours to build, yours specifically. Not because no one else could do something similar, but because no one else would do it the way you would do it, from the depth you would bring to it, with the specific combination of experiential authority and compassion and fire-forged wisdom that only you carry in this specific configuration. That thing is your next level. And the altitude you have reached, the beyond the anticipated level height, is the specific altitude from which that thing needs to be built. Not from the lower levels, from here, from the height that the fire produced. Because what you are meant to build requires the authority of someone who has been this high. The people it is designed to reach require someone who is speaking from this altitude. Lower would not carry the weight they need. lower would not reach the depth where they are living, only from here, which means every season that lifted you to this altitude, every fire, every wilderness, every almost breaking and somehow remaining, was not just preparation for your personal development. It was construction of the platform from which you will build the thing. The altitude is the platform, and the platform is complete. Now, I want to talk about what the next level looks like from where you are standing, because the ascension does not end here. This altitude, as significant as it is, as hard-won as it is not the destination. It is the launching point. And the next level from here is not simply more of what got you here. The next level is deployment. Everything up to this point has been formation. The fire formed you, the wilderness shaped you, the isolation deepened you, the loss enlarged you, the almost breaking and somehow remaining forged in you a quality of spiritual authority that cannot be manufactured any other way. All of that was formation, the making of the instrument. The next level is the playing of the instrument, not the continued refinement of it, though refinement never fully ends, but the active, intentional, full-volume deployment of what was formed. The moment when the chosen one stops being shaped by the process and starts being expressed through it. When the fire that formed them becomes the fire that lights the way for others. When the wilderness that trained them becomes the map they hand to others who are currently in their own wilderness. When the authority that was forged in suffering becomes the word that lifts someone else out of the suffering they are currently in. Deployment, that is the next level. And I want to be specific about what deployment requires from someone at your altitude, because deployment from this level is not the same as deployment from a lower level. It does not look like grinding harder or being more disciplined or building a bigger platform through more strategic effort. Those things matter, but they are not the primary engine of deployment at this altitude. The primary engine at this altitude is surrender, specifically the surrender of control over the form your deployment takes. Because the chosen one who has risen beyond the anticipated level has often developed as a coping mechanism, as a survival strategy, as a very understandable response to the chaos of the seasons they have been through. A need to control the shape of what they release into the world. To manage the presentation, to decide in advance what is safe to show and what needs to be protected, to release only what feels polished, only what feels ready, only what has been refined to the point where it cannot be criticized or misunderstood or used against them. And that control, that completely understandable, completely human, completely earned need to manage the release is the one thing that is limiting the deployment. Because what people at the level below yours need from you is not the polished version. They need the real version. The version that carries the actual weight of what you actually went through. The version that is not protected against misunderstanding because it is too busy being true to be concerned about how it might be received. The real version reaches people. The polished version impresses them. You are not built to impress. You are built to reach. Surrender the control. Release the real. Trust that the authority forged in your fire will land in the fires of the people who need it and do what authority always does when it meets the right recipient. It liberates. Now the declaration, the one that officially marks this as the moment you accepted the altitude rather than apologizing for it, the moment you received the ascension rather than explaining it away, the moment you stopped performing smallness in spaces that could not contain what you actually carry. Say it out loud, all of it, with the full weight of the chosen one who has risen beyond what was anticipated and is finally standing in the truth of it. Say, I accept the altitude. I stop apologizing for how far I have come. I received every season that brought me here, the fire, the wilderness, the loss, the isolation, and I receive what they produced. I carry experiential authority, and I will deploy it. I carry real compassion, and I will give it fully. I carry the assignment that has survived every season, and I will build it from this altitude. I am not too much. I am not too high. I am exactly where the fire brought me, and I receive it as preparation rather than accident. I stop shrinking. I start occupying. From this moment, at this altitude, as the chosen one who rose further than was anticipated and is now ready to deploy everything that the rising produced. That declaration is your official acceptance of the altitude. God did not put you through what he put you through so you could stand at the top of it and look down in confusion. He put you through it so you could stand at the top of it and build from there, so you could speak from there. So you could reach from there with a hand that has been through the fire and knows how to hold another hand that is currently in it. The altitude is yours. The authority is yours. The assignment is waiting. Heaven foresaw greatness in you. You exceeded it. Now build.